Hit the like button for me. Say where you're watching from. June 16th, 2025 on a Monday. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Cozy Corner TV. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. We're on the corner, y'all. What is up, everybody? We are back. Welcome to the daily live stream. All right, guys. So, as per usual, we got a couple clips to react to. Pretty fast clips tonight. Stephen A. Smith's clip is the longest. We're going to react to probably about 15 minutes of that. Then I want you guys to go over to give him his due views, because that video is about an hour and 15 minutes, and we're not going to cover that whole entire thing. So with that being said, as per usual, I am a big advocate for mental health and wellness. So I'd like to say, before you watch this, because this can be triggering, make sure you are regulated and or grounded, because news can be triggering. If you're not, don't watch it right now. Come back later. But if you are, welcome to the live stream. All right, guys. So I'm going to read through the menu of what we'll be digesting. First up, we got shout out to Mark Wayne Mullen. 15.5K subscribers, guys. If you get a chance, go check out Mark Wayne Mullen's channel. I watch him often. I think he covers news great. Puts really good clips out there. Does really good commentary. First up, we got Senator Mullen. That's why he needs to be fired. So he gives a little commentary to Sean Hannity on why he thinks Governor Gavin Newsome should actually be fired. It shouldn't be governor anymore, but that's not shocking. A lot of people have been saying that about Gavin Newsome for some time now. Then we will switch gears and go over to Matt Morris TV. Shout out to Matt Morris. We react to Matt over here on the channel often. Trump just doubled down. So he's going to talk a little bit about some legislation and some plans that President Trump has coming up. I don't really want to spoil it, so we're going to leave it to Matt to go over that. Then we'll switch gears and we'll go over to Stephen A. Smith. Shout out to Stephen A. Smith, 2028 possible presidential candidate. We cover Stephen on the channel often. Political violence, military parades, protests, ICE raids, and more. And he has Bill O'Reilly on, so we'll take a look at that for a couple of minutes. We're going to go over to 13 WMAZ. Shout out to them. New details released as man accused of Minnesota lawmaker shootings appear in court. We covered some of that yesterday. The man who posed as an officer in Minnesota and went to two lawmaker officials' house and murdered one couple and badly injured another. And then we're going to switch gears and jump over to Real Time with Bill Maher. Shout out to Bill Maher. John Fetterman addresses the haters. So I thought this was going to be extremely entertaining. I did get a chance to watch this, but he had Bill Maher had Fetterman on a couple days ago. So I thought we would take a look at some of the things he's been saying as far as, him being the black sheep of the Democratic Party. And I was like, oh snap, he actually doesn't have on shorts and a sweatshirt. He has on pants. And he has on a shirt. I think he has on a button-up shirt. Not that I care, but people are always making fun at the fact that John Fetterman doesn't wear real clothes, which I think is stupid. They literally say he doesn't qualify to be a senator, and he doesn't qualify to go any higher than what he is, because he always has on basketball shorts and a sweater. I'm like, well, I don't think that matters. The Democratic Party isn't doing too well anyway, and thanks to President Trump, he's already paved the way for unlikely people to become presidential candidates. So we'll see where that goes. But I kind of like John Fetterman. I always tell Pennsylvania to keep an eye on him. And I always say, if the Democrats are going to put anybody out there, he's at least one of the people they should consider that hasn't gone too far high into the left. At least that's what I say. All right, guys. So first up on the menu, we're going to take a look at Mark Wayne Mullen. Senator Mullen, that's why he needs to be fired. So he's going to be commentating on Gavin Newsome here. Let's take a listen.
Truth is, anyone who actually wants a safe, comfortable life and a real shot at the American dream, you're better off living in a red state like my free state of Florida than in Los Angeles or the state of our next guest. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma, a great state, a red state, joins us. He, too, was going back and forth with Gavin Newsome on Twitter today. He just texted me and asked me if I was going to cover what he had to say, and I said, sure, but I'll fact-check you, as I always do. He has time to be sending posts back and forth between me and him and you and him, and he's on podcasts, and he's doing MSDNC and local media bashing Trump. And meanwhile, in full denial of what's been going on in his city and what the damage that has been caused by his sanctuary state policies. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, here's a guy that has a state that underneath his reign as governor has lost 3 million people leaving the state. And they rank #1 in murders in the nation. They have #1 cost of living, high cost of living. They have the #1 highest prices in the nation. And you're sitting here.
If you hang on, let's listen in on Gavin Newsom, then I'll give you a chance to respond first. I don't think we have any volume.
They muted Gavin Newsom
Right.
on purpose.
I guess we have no. Is that on their end or is it on our end? I'm asking. And that's on their end. Apparently a live feed. He's having a little bit
The
of
government, shout out to you. Perfect profile picture.
Podcast and
Shout out to
MSDNC
you.
and to fight me on X and you on X. I think you're kind of missing the point. Or if you put handcuffs on police.
He absolutely is, Sean, but this is part of the best thing that can happen to him is having audio difficulties. But it shows how bad the state's being ran, too, right? The guy absolutely should be thanking President Trump right now for trying to restore an order, because the only thing Governor Newsom is good at right now is sucking at being #1 at being terrible governor. I mean, that is it. The guy has
A lot of people have said that.
literally has ran California into the ground. I mean, here California is a beautiful state. But at the same time, they have poor leadership. I mean, look.
You guys know there's not one person not saying that Gavin Newsom hasn't run California into the ground.
They gave us Kamala Harris. They gave us Mr. Fang Fang himself, Swalwell, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff. And you're thinking, what type of leadership do they have there on the west coast of California? Because things are going completely backwards. Why isn't California thriving like the rest of the country? Well, because they have a blue state ran by woke DEI agenda that doesn't support law and order. And thank God we have a president that's willing to stand up for the people of Los Angeles, even if they may not have supported him.
All right, I'm talking to my control room, and they're telling me that there's no audio available. I'm trying to put Gavin Newsom up. We can show a shot of it again. I'd like to carry it for people. I'd like to hear him again excoriate Donald Trump and blame Donald Trump. Oh, it just went down completely. I mean, you can't make this up.
You can't make this up.
They really can't. He wanted me to cover it. He texted me. I'm like, sure, look, I'll cover it, but if you give it out false information, I'll fact check you. But here's the sad part to me, and I said this in my final exchange with him, that to me, he's put his own blind political ambition over the safety of law enforcement and the safety of the law-abiding people in Los Angeles in this case, but in his state. Sanctuary, city, and state policies put handcuffs on cops. They can't do their job. They can't help ICE. Look at the people that I went through in my opening monologue, the people, the worst of the worst, as ICE has been saying and the administration has been saying. You know, you're looking at murderers, gang members, child molesters. Why would you fight to keep those people in your state? I don't want people like that in my state of Florida. Get out. Why would you do that? And I'm scrolling the failure of California, the victims, the criminal history of people in California. Gavin, have you ever called these people, these families, and said you're sorry or said, I'm going to fix this? The answer is no. We'll keep scrolling. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, you sit there and you think about what he's doing. He's just auditioning to be president, right? But they've got so far to the left that they can't come back to the center. Even when President Trump is trying to support them at restoring law and order, they have to be anti-Trump, because that's where the Democrat base is at. It's anti anything that Trump supports, no matter how right or how good it is for even their state. You're talking about leadership,
absolutely
like you said. Has he called any of these victims that's been victims of these criminals that have been breaking the law because they've created a sanctuary city? At the same time, I want to make the comparison. President Trump, under his presidency, unfortunately, in his first presidency, we lost some men and women in uniform in Oklahoma. There wasn't one single family that I reached out to that President Trump hadn't personally already reached out to and offer them almost everything. I don't want to get into it because some of it President Trump probably wouldn't like me to talk about, because he's kind of private in that nature. But the fact is, President Trump always leads from the front. He's willing to do what is right, regardless of what other people may think of him, and regardless of even what their party affiliation is. And he's showing it right here, too, even with the National Guard.
14, shut up.
Let me just go through this.
Yeah.
The Democrats are absolutely going through and throwing a fit that he's mobilized the National Guard. But we realize that Eisenhower did this in 1957 when they had a racist governor in Arkansas that had mobilized the National Guard to prevent he wanted to prevent segregation, and Eisenhower took over the National Guard to actually enforce desegregation. This happened again when President Kennedy in 62 and in 63 underneath the same circumstances, but it happened in Mississippi and Alabama, and President Johnson did this in 75 when he activated the National Guard. All this is what? To protect people's civil rights. Let's look what's happening right now in California. People's civil rights are being destroyed because San Francisco, LA, and California wants to become a sanctuary city and state and allow illegals to do just what they're doing right here. And President Trump isn't having it. He's going to stand up for people. Period.
See, I blame the left because what they have done, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, you're the lawmaker. The same question I asked Senator Kennedy. When you institutionalize law breaking by giving sanctuary status, and with that, for example, in California comes, you get a free education, you get free health care, etc. When you institutionalize it, when you prevent cops from even asking somebody's status, then you are institutionalizing law breaking, or where I come from, maybe not from out there, that would be called aiding and abetting law breakers. How is it not aiding and abetting if I'm wrong?
You're 100% correct. You're encouraging bad behavior. We say this all the time in our family. A thief isn't just born that way. A thief takes the first opportunity to become a thief. When you allow criminal activity to take place just by a little bit, by ignoring the simple fact that you're in the country illegal, you encourage additional bad behavior. And they may just start stealing your bubble gum, and eventually they're going to grow into a more serious situation to unfortunately receive rape and murder. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it is what's happening in these cities. And anybody could have solved this happening. We could have solved this moving forward because it was
Stay right there. Here's Gavin Newsome. They finally got his feet up.
I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation.
Here we go.
It went dead again. But Mark Wayne Mullen, notice what he does. He's blaming Trump. Law enforcement can't even ask if they're in the country legally. I mean, that's the unbelievable
Law enforcement
thing.
is the one who said they were overwhelmed.
You know, I never fired.
By the way, he needs a tech operator.
He does. And Sean, I was going to say that I've never fired anybody for making a mistake. I fired a lot of people for not admitting they made a mistake. Gavin Newsome needs to be fired as governor. And there's no way this guy should be running that state.
Well, I will tell you this. I think. All right, let's listen to it. Let's dip in again.
Trump was pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves. But they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases quite literally are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority, commandeer the National Guard, commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state. And this is about all of us. This is about all of us. Is about this. California may be first. California may be first, but it clearly will not end. Other democracies are next. Democracy. Democracy is under assault. This moment has. All
right, we have apparently more audio problems and more feed problems with Gavin Newsom. Mark Wayne Mullen, while he was doing this and trying to blame Donald Trump for pretty much anything and everything that's ever gone wrong in history, it's interesting because I scrolled the names of victims of violent crime. I'm scrolling it right now in California. And in multiple private texts and publicly in my battle and my fight with him on X, because he had nothing better to do but to respond to both of us on X, in every single case, what about the people murdered, Gavin? What about the people raped? What about the victims of violent crime? What about the big lie that they told us the borders closed, the borders secure? What about all of that, Gavin? He never addresses any of these issues. He is not keeping law enforcement or the people in his state, the people in these sanctuary states and cities safe. That's the problem. And law enforcement, again, has their hands tied. I mean, we see this now spreading. Is he going to blame Donald Trump for what's happening in New York City? Or is it...
All right, I'm going to stop there. And a lot of people are saying that Sean Hannity is very one-sided. You know, they're saying, well, he's in support of President Trump, so of course he's going to come after Gavin Newsom. I don't think that's what it is. Sean Hannity, we do know that he's a supporter of Trump. We do know that he's a supporter of the law. You know, yes, he leans right. But in his defense, Gavin Newsom has been getting things about not being the best person to run California for some time now. And as I said, I literally cannot think of a person who hasn't said that he hasn't run the state of California into the ground. Now, if they said he hasn't done it, they're probably a Democrat. But with that being said, people like John Fetterman, he has went on record to publicly say things about Gavin Newsom and how he's been running the state of California. And the other people have went on record to say that he could do a lot better. If not, close to what Mark Maron said, he should be fired, you know? So I'm not going to say that I totally agree with him. I will say that he's not very liked right now. I will say that I knew if he ran for president against Trump that there was no way that he was going to win then. I don't see it very possible in 2028, but who knows? I think he thinks with his podcast, he's going to make a lot more headway. So let's see how that works out for him. We'll keep track of it. 2028 isn't that far, right? So switching gears, guys, we're going to go to Matt Moore's TV. Trump just doubled down. Let's see what Matt has to say about this.
Massive bombshell statement regarding all of the
Let me start that from the beginning.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump has just issued an absolutely massive bombshell statement regarding all of the ongoing controversy about deportations, and ICE agents. And I'll tell you what, folks, I think you are going to want to hear this. Now, as many of you know, for the last week or so, the far-left radical progressives have been up in arms over President Trump's ongoing endeavor to apprehend, detain, and deport every single illegal alien currently inside of the country. Which is why it's so massive that President Trump just had this to say. Take a look. Our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in American history. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians, but nothing will stop us from executing our mission and fulfilling our mandate to the American people. ICE officers are herewith ordered by notice of this truth to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in American history. In order to achieve this, we must expand efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens currently reside. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hard-working American citizens.
This is Pod 5, the first fully immersive sleep system. Intelligent.
These radical left Democrats are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities, and they are doing a good job of it. There is something wrong with them. That is why they believe in open borders, transgender for everybody, and men playing in women's sports. And that is why I want ICE, Border Patrol, and our great and patriotic law enforcement officers to focus on our crime-ridden and deadly inner cities and those places where sanctuary cities play such a big role. You don't hear about sanctuary cities in our heartland. I want our brave ICE officers to know that real Americans are cheering you on every single day. The American people want our cities, schools, and communities to be safe and free from illegal alien crime, conflict, and chaos. That's why I have directed my entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort and reverse the tide of mass destruction migration that has turned our once idyllic towns into scenes of third world dystopia. Our federal government will continue to be focused on the remigration of aliens to places from where they came from and preventing the admission of anyone who undermines the domestic tranquility of the United States. To ICE, FBI, DEA, ATF, and patriots at the Pentagon and the State Department, you have my unwavering support. Now go get the job done. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. How do you like that for a statement? President Trump has just doubled down on carrying out the single largest mass deportation program in United States history, and his primary target, the radically progressive sanctuary cities. And now, folks, we have a lot more to talk about here, but before we do,
let me go a little bit further. He's talking about the prison here.
the progressive left is trying to push this completely ridiculous narrative that President Trump has lied to all of his voters by carrying out these mass deportations, saying that Trump only ever said he'd only deport the most violent criminal illegal aliens, but not the regular, normal illegal aliens. And so, like I said, we all know that this entire narrative is just absolutely ridiculous, but on that note, take a look at this.
I hear this talking point a lot from Democrats that Donald Trump misled the American people and somehow said he was only going to deport violent criminals. At every single rally that I watched, he said, we are going to have the largest deportation operation in American history. And the reason he did that is because that position has majority support with the American people, and that position is what got him the majority of working class people. Because immigration is a topic that divides the working class from the elites. The elites are the consumers of low-wage labor, and when you guys say they're taking people from the community, what you mean is they're taking people from the workforce, people who undercut the wages of American workers, which is why the working class flipped from the Democrats to the Republicans.
And so, folks, not only is everything she just said absolutely true, but also we have the numbers to back it up. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this.
You know, if we just take a look at the baseline numbers here, this is Trump's net approval rating on immigration. It's gone up like a rocket. Compare now versus 8 years ago during Trump's first term. Look at this. In his first term, Trump was way underwater at minus 21 points. But look at this. He's up over 20 points. Now, in the aggregate, he is in positive territory at plus 1 point on his net approval rating. Some other polls even have it a little bit higher than that. There is no issue on which Trump is doing so much better than he was in his first term, more than the issue of immigration. No wonder the Times has written up the way that he is. Trump is begging for a fight on this because he knows what he's doing so far is working with the American electorate.
Where does immigration rank on issues for him? How is he doing compared to others?
Yeah, so I think what's so important is it is his top issue so far, and the reason it is his top issue is because take a look at the individual nuggets in here. Why are people approving of Trump on immigration, approve of these different immigration actions? While Trump's administration's program to deport those here illegally, look at this, 54% approval. How about agents searching your hometown for those that they think are here illegally? Again, positive territory here, above 50% for Donald Trump. So it's not just on the broad issue of immigration where Trump is doing well, it's on the specifics. When you dive into the issues, Trump is above 50% and his actions are above 50%, at least with those most directly connected to what's going on right now out in Los Angeles.
So Donald Trump, the president, picking a fight on this, and to an extent, you see Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, a Democrat, and the California Governor Gavin Newsom pushing back. So what do voters see in terms of their perceptions of Republicans, the president, or Democrats, say Gavin Newsom on this issue?
Yeah, the American electorate believe that the Democrats don't have a clue on the issue of immigration. I mean, you could just take it here. Closer to trust more in immigration, Democrats versus Republicans. Got 3 different polls for you across the board. They all tell the same story. Republicans lead on the issue of immigration. You see it here, CBS +6. You see it here, CNN +6. You see it here, Ipsos, even bigger, +19. No matter what poll you look at, no matter which way you cut it, the American public is with the Republicans, the American public is with Donald Trump, and to a much greater extent than they were in term number 1. And it's not just on the broad issue of immigration, it's on the specifics as well, in which the American public is with Donald Trump and the Republicans. And that is why Donald Trump is eager to take on this fight and eager for those scenes out of Los Angeles.
I was just going to use that word eager. This explains some of that eagerness to push forward ever more on this as it escalates. Harriet, thank you.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The reality is, the overwhelming majority of Americans nationwide completely support President Trump's ongoing endeavor to deport not just the violent gang member illegal aliens, but really every single illegal alien that is currently inside of the country. And so, folks, that is exactly what President Trump is doing right now, because that is what it's going to take to really make America great again. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want...
Shout out to Matt Morris. So, here's what I think is interesting. Probably one of the worst polls I showed. The worst polls I showed here on the live stream is when they talked about the fact that the only reason why they think President Trump's approval rating was over half, over 51%, over 50%, is because half of the country is sleeping, right? Half the American people are sleeping. And I thought to myself, wow, this is the best explanation they can come up with for his approval rating being this high. Not that it's a mandate from the American people, right? Forget the fact that the lady on CNN is right. Every single rally I watched, President Trump talked about a mass deportation. And he didn't necessarily always use the verbiage of the illegal alien. He just said mass deportation. If anything, that was the running theme of most of his campaign trail, was the mass deportation point. So I would agree with her there. What I think is just interesting is that his approval rating for immigration and deportation specifically is so high. So when we have so many, I'm not going to say all the Democrats, but the far left crazies, right, saying that, oh, President Trump is getting rid of these average American people. Well, you know, we've had people from the administration come on to say, listen, there will be mistakes. We're trying to rectify those mistakes as soon as we can. But the media is doing a really great job at getting the clips and capturing the moments where they're able to evoke emotion from people, where they're able to grab these certain type of moments and people can see them. And now you have people in the street screaming, "Don't take the mother," or even people behind the TV set or on YouTube on their device. They're saying, "Look at what President Trump is doing," and you know it really is a nasty rhetoric that they're putting out there. It really is, because they're doing it in a very left-leaning way, a way where it favors the liberals. So now when 2028 comes, everyone can just scream bad Trump because he got rid of all of these people and he deported and he messed up all of these families, and no one's paying attention to anything Barack Obama did. I've had people come at me and they're like, "Q, you know, we just feel like you feel some type of way about Barack Obama." I kind of do. That's no secret. You know, it hasn't been a secret for a long time with me. It really what it is. It's the ignorance of the people that look like me that just strictly support him and don't know anything that he's ever done. That usually annoys me. But other than that, you know, it's not like I know him personally and I have something against him. I just want to be clear that the media is not transparent. It's not transparent at all. And for the most part, most mainstream media is left-leaning. So we have to be aware of that. All right, guys, so we're going to switch gears and we're going to jump over to Stephen A. Smith. We're going to watch a couple of minutes of this because this is over an hour. And then after that, I want you guys to go over and give Stephen A. Smith his due views for putting together this great video, as he always does. And we are actually going to cover the gentleman who acted as a police officer and shot the two lawmakers with Stephen A. Smith. So we won't act on that independently. We'll go a couple minutes in and then I'll stop.
Politicians getting murdered. Parades going on in the nation's capital. Protests going on all across the country. And meanwhile, there's still an NBA Finals going on. And Ice Cube, with his basketball league, ain't going anywhere either. The Stephen A. Smith Show in the house. Lots to discuss. Let's go. The Indiana Pacers, so I hope that you like my confines for this particular edition of the show. As always, I'd like to take a moment to thank my followers and subscribers, the millions of downloads we received over iHeartRadio, along with the 1.24 million subscribers that we've eclipsed over the started in Minnesota, where there were two shootings, both of which appeared to have been politically motivated by a man arrested late last night. Officials say the gunman, posing as a police officer, fatally shot State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Saturday at their home. That shooting came after he wounded State Senator John Hoffman and his wife at their home. After the first attack, police said they proactively checked on Representative Hortman's home, where they found a shooter posing as an officer before he fled. The suspect, Vance Bolter is his name, was arrested Sunday after what a local police chief called the largest manhunt in state's history. Bolter is charged with 2 counts each of second-degree murder and second-degree attempted murder, which are likely to be upgraded to first degree. Bolter is also being charged in federal court with 1 count of stalking Representative Hortman, 1 count of stalking Senator Hoffman, 2 counts of murder through use of a firearm, punishable up to death, by the way, and 2 counts of firearms offenses for the shootings of the Hoffmans. The shootings happened Saturday in what turned out to be a tense day in national politics. Thousands of people across the country participated in No Kings protest against the Trump administration. All this while the president himself hosted a military parade celebrating 250 years of the Army in Washington, D.C. Couple of things to get out of the way. Number one, my condolences to loved ones of the Hortmans. Obviously, that is a tragedy, an unspeakable tragedy, something none of us should condone. We should cheer, we should celebrate in any way. It's heinous as it comes. As far as I'm concerned, if this is indeed the assailant, the one who committed this crime, Mr. Bolter, I have no problem with him receiving the death penalty whatsoever. Let's get that out of the way first. I'm a believer in that under special circumstances. This is one of them. He should be put to death as far as I'm concerned. I have no problem with that. That's number one. Number two, obviously to the Hoffmans, I hope that they end up recovering and they'll be well as they'll end up well and they'll recuperate as well. So my heart goes out to them and what they've had to endure and experience. And the violence and the rhetoric, this is not isolated along party lines. Both sides of the political aisle has engaged in rhetoric. I'm not going to say stirring or inciting violence, but certainly the rhetoric has been harsh. And this is what I try to tell people in America all the time and beyond when we're talking about these issues. I cover sports for a living. It's my day job. Ladies and gentlemen, people get passionate about sports. If people get passionate about a game where folks win and folks lose, even when they're not gambling on it, they're not losing money on it, they're just emotionally invested in their particular team and the outcome, what do you think they feel about the economy if it detrimentally affects them? What do you think they're thinking about representatives when it involves immigration, when it involves healthcare, when it involves education? You're talking about people's lives, quality of life being impacted by elected officials. This is why I continuously point out how the rhetoric has to die down. We gotta agree to disagree. We can disagree without being so disagreeable, without engaging in a kind of incendiary rhetoric where we're constantly pointing the finger at one side or another, showing an inability to work together, or at least giving that impression, and then wondering how stuff like this could happen. According to the police and according to the reports, Mr. Bolter had a manifesto in a vehicle that he was driving, by the way, which was disguised as a police vehicle. And he had on a police outfit, according to the reports. And they said in the manifesto, he had targeted over 70 people. Some were politicians. Some were pro-abortion advocates.
Today, every business needs a website. Unless this is what your business looks like. But if it's not.
So you have to take those things into consideration and wonder, in God's name, what do you think is going to happen if you're talking about people like that? And you're pointing the finger of blame. And you're not giving the impression we're discussing, we're negotiating, we're getting along, everybody can't have everything that they want, but we're aligned in some of our thinking. Half the time they're agreeing with one another on both sides of the aisle, they don't even tell us. And then you wonder how you have some people on the fringes, particularly the extremists, and what they're going to do. One of the things that somebody pointed out, and they pointed this out, and I had to remember this. One person texted me, they said, did you see the expression on a guy's face when they caught him? Talking about Bolter. They said, did you see the facial expression on the guy who shot up the embassy weeks ago? Did you see the guy's face who shot up the healthcare, who shot the healthcare CEO, Luigi, when they caught him? They said, did you see how extremists look, Stephen A? Calm. Calm. So we have to fight extremism. We have to fight stuff on the fringes on both sides of the aisle. We have to make sure that there's a line that everybody knows should never be crossed. Yes, it's happened throughout history. President Reagan got shot. Abraham Lincoln got shot. Folks in between got shot. We got that part. Steve Scalise, representative, he got shot. All of these things. The former representative in Arizona, she got shot. The point is not normalizing it, not walking around like it's okay. Now, as it pertains to what's been going on in the streets of America, we're talking about Trump and the Trump administration celebrating 250 years of the Army. Perfectly within his right to do so, but let's be real, it was a bit over the top. Showing America's might and America's strength. Well, if we know we have it, why do we need to show off? we're considered the richest, most powerful country in the world, right? Everybody knows our military might. Why do we need to showcase it? And why did it have to coincide on the 79th birthday of the 47th President of the United States? Was it about our nation or was it about him? No matter how much he tried to say it wasn't. The flip side to it, however, is that on a day when that parade was taking place, there were thousands upon thousands of protesters across the United States of America. New York, LA, and every place in between. And it was supposed to be in Minnesota until the police was asking folks not to attend because the shooter was still on the loose. And what were they protesting? ICE. And migrants being grabbed in the streets by members of ICE in an effort to ultimately deport them. And folks were coming to the defense of it. You had the state of California suing the Trump administration. You have people talk about no kings, no kings. He's not a dictator. This is not an authoritarian regime. But that's why he's trying to make it like, well, really? That's why the state's suing him. That's why he's losing some of these cases in court. Last time I checked, you're in a position of power. You try to get your way. Somebody sues you, they fend you off by going through our court system. The court system makes a ruling, and as a result, it shows that our system works. What is Trump doing differently than what he campaigned on? You may not like it. That's why you win the election, so he's not in a position to do it. As opposed to focusing on stuff that ain't gonna win an election. And then I talked to some folks on that side of the aisle, and these are the kind of messages that I'm getting. It's the Democrats' only way to be relevant. They have no answers to help Americans. They don't go over the top for American criminals. Our prisons are full of people separated from their families. They didn't say anything about those folks. Most of the leaders of the protest are paid agitators. You get into the Iran-Israeli conflict, something else that the United States could end up in the middle of because Israel ain't playing games. They're going after all of their enemies. They're not playing games. We're already seeing what they've done in Gaza. We know how they're trying to disarm Iran's ability to build a nuclear weapon, and they're hell-bent on doing so. We know that we were in negotiations with Iran, and ultimately we scaled that back, and then all of a sudden Israel attacks. Now you've got officials from Iran saying there's no reason to have talks. Because there's no way that America didn't know about this, and that this was coming, etc. With all of that going on, then you have folks on the right saying, what's new? Destroying Iran's military nuclear sites is a good thing. We'll also destroy Hezbollah and Hamas, ISIS as well, being that they were funded by Iran. So every time you sit there, you throw something in their direction, the other side has something to say. No matter which way you slice it, in the end, America is in a quandary. At some point in time, we'll have to come together.
Political ping pong.
You don't have to like everything about Trump.
Nope.
I don't like what he's doing in California. I don't like what he's doing with the migrants. I don't like it at all. And I think that he caught himself because he mandated a pause on the raids when it came to agriculture, hotels, restaurants, etc., because those businesses were being detrimentally affected. And he's going to need those folks supporting him, particularly in the midterms. So you can make sure the GOP members remain in the House and the Senate. But in the end, what it comes down to, is he overstepping his hand?
Midterms.
Probably so. But to the right, he's doing what he campaigned on. So in their eyes, he's keeping his word. They don't mind that because they don't believe politicians on the left have done that.
They haven't.
No matter which way you slice it, it's an absolute mess. We got Israel and Iran going at it. Over 250 missiles being dropped on one another. We still got the conflict with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. We still see that going on. We got a tariff situation here. You know what folks are going to say, right? The right. Tariffs, $10 trillion in investments for manufacturing and auto, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say Iranian nuke threat about to be finished for our lifetime. Save us from a modern day Holocaust. That's what they're going to say. Whatever point the left is going to have, the right is going to have a counterpoint to justify anything that Trump is doing. Where's the solution? Can't see one in sight. Here's the biggest problem. Peace is not a part of this equation, even within our own borders. We're at each other's throat. No sight of coming together in sight. It's pretty bad right now. And it looks to be getting worse. It looks to be getting worse. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Coming up.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop it right there. Like I said, I want you guys to go give Steven his due views for that extremely hard work video he put out. He always does hard work on his videos. We appreciate that about Steven. You guys go take a look. It's political ping pong, as he says, and we know that, right? Anything the left has to say, the right will have something to say. Anything the right has to say, the left will have something to say. I'm not gonna say I don't necessarily like what President Trump is doing with the whole immigration thing. Of course, I don't like to see families separated. There was an incident in Texas where first the father got arrested, and then from the same family, a 19-year-old girl was arrested. I believe they both did end up getting released. There was a high school boy that was arrested. He ended up getting released. So it's not as if these people who are getting detained by ICE are also getting deported right away. That's not happening. There are plenty of people who have gotten detained by ICE and they've also gotten released and they've just gotten a court date, right? And those are probably the people who have been here and they haven't committed any crimes or anything like that. So they're not on necessarily, I guess we could say, a radar. But we do have some who are. So those who are, my dog's here. Those are the ones that usually are being held a lot longer, being detained. But there have been many cases, I can't sit here and just be one-sided, where I've seen people get detained by ICE and they've also been released back to their families with just a court date and they have not been deported. So really quick, we're going to take a look at this clip of John Fetterman on Bill Maher. They're having a conversation about John Fetterman addressing the haters. As we know, John Fetterman is usually deemed the black sheep of the Democrats, right? People make fun of him because he doesn't like to wear suits and he usually wears shorts and a hoodie. So here he at least has on pants. We got to give him that, right? So let's take a look at what he had to say.
Do you think this is the issue that made people sort of turn on you? I saw recently reports you had, I think your chief of staff quit on you and started talking shit about you.
Yeah.
And we know, you made no secret of it. In fact, you purposely publicized it so that people would take inspiration from it, that you had a stroke, you had issues with depression. And it seemed to me like they were sort of weaponizing that to say you'd gone crazy. And I did smell kind of a rat here when I read that you were driving recklessly and too much time on Twitter and megalomania. I'm like, So defend yourself here, John. I mean, I don't think you're crazy. You don't seem crazy, and I have certainly seen people who refuse to go all the way with the purity lovers on the left suddenly castigated and cast out and attacked like this. So is that what's going on?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Parts of my party just wants to turn me into a Colonel Kurtz. And just claim that it's like, I'm just like a...
You look like you could play the part.
So really that would happen, after Israel and if the border, and some of the times I might have to disagree with my party, and that's really, we brought us to that place where, just that kind of a canceling was a little bit a different thing, but now we've all moved on from that, but absolutely, that's the truth.
Some of the things they said were that you weren't showing up, and then I read further and read what you said about it, and it seemed like you weren't showing up for bullshit, that a lot of what the senators are required to do just doesn't matter. You don't really have to be there.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is called bed check. What is that?
Yeah, bed check vote. It's like these votes really doesn't matter. That's why they're called bed check. It's just like you had a choice. It's like they were just procedural thing. And I took the opportunity to spend an extra day with my young children and that. So now that's not, and I've made 90% of the votes. So none of them were determinative. So for me, people in the Senate have missed more votes than I did, but they weren't breaking the kind of rules that I've been. So they kind of used that to weaponize that in a very cynical way.
They also seem to go after you because you will talk to the other side. You talk to Trump. We all know that's bad.
We're one of the few people that actually have dinner with Trump.
Yeah, and you also, I think I don't know if you had dinner with Steve Bannon, but he was at your table or something at a restaurant that the MAGA people go to. It's like, well, what are we in high school now? You can't sit at the same lunch table with these people?
No, I wasn't even having dinner with him. With Steve Bannon.
Drop by the table?
Yeah, well, no, he lives close by, and the guy that I was having a beer with, the guy, Steve said, hey, I'd like to come over and just say hello, and sure, that's fine, he just sat down. We weren't having dinner, doing anything like that. I hate to use the phrase fake news, but that's really what it was. I wasn't like having, like dinner with Steve Bannon, but I was just hanging out, talking to the other side, and now, if you break those kinds of rules, then you do have to pay a price for that, as I know you have too.
But you could have dinner with him, right? It wouldn't turn you into a zombie.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's like when I first got into my career, people assumed Blake was a socialist or a Marxist, and now people think that I'm going to turn into MAGA and I'm going to go this other way. And I'm like, no, my values haven't changed, but I think in some cases that I think our party's values have changed, and then there's been a lot of flux for me professionally. I'm not going to change my party.
I happen to like John Fetterman. Some people might say, he doesn't speak as eloquently as I would like him to. I would just push back on that and say, well, neither does our current president. He doesn't always speak as eloquently as most of us would like him to either, right? But if I have to think about the fact that 2028 is coming up, and we love the fact that in America we have more than one political party to vote for, I would like to see the Democrats at least get it together and give the Republicans a run for their money. Like I would like to see it be a good, at least a good political campaign and not be a complete blowout like what we saw last time, right? So I think Fetterman is one of the better ones on the Democratic side. If they were going to put up a couple candidates, I definitely think he should be up for consideration. If they're smart, they'll do it. If they are smart, they will do it. If they're not, which they've proven to us that they're not that smart, right? Then they probably won't. Then we'll see some other names, which right now I'll leave them to be nameless, but you guys probably know some of them I'm thinking about. All right, guys, so we're going to jump over here to the last clip of the live stream. Shout out to Cliff Buell, YouTube content creator, who I follow, like, love, support his content. You guys check out his channel when you get a chance. Title of today's video, do you agree with Charlie Kirk? Let's take a listen.
Watch. If I went to Mexico without being allowed and I took a job and the Mexican government found out, what would the Mexican government do to me?
I'm not sure.
They would send me back to America.
And why was the reason you left the U.S. first?
So reason, is there ever a legitimate reason in your opinion to commit a crime?
No.
Well, then the reason doesn't matter. Can you rob a bank because you wish you had more money?
No, you work harder.
Then why doesn't that moral standard apply to immigration?
Because the system isn't doing its job. That's why I think they should implement more money. I do admit some of them commit crime, but not all of them.
They're breaking federal law 8 U.S.C. 1312. Just their presence here is against the law. If somebody comes into America and they are illegal, what do you think the penalty should be?
I think it's humane to look at their case and why they had to leave everything they've ever known.
We believe that we should send them back to their country of origin. California is a cluttered state with social services that are being strained, and we need a pause on all immigration, in my opinion, or else we are going to have a major assimilation problem, cohesion problem, all sorts of issues. Immigration is something that you use as a way to benefit the homeland. You don't have to have immigration. Watch. If I went to Mexico...
So I think Charlie Kirk makes a good point here. Some people would push back on this, but he's absolutely right here. One of his last points was probably one of his best points when he said immigration is something that can be done to benefit the homeland, but it's not. Immigration is not something that has to happen, right? It's not something that let's just say it's not a necessity. It's a benefit, but it's not a necessity. It doesn't have to take place. Yes, it can benefit a country, but it's not something that needs to happen. He also points out that if immigration doesn't take a pause in California, they're going to have a lot of assimilation issues, cohesion issues. Well, that makes sense because a lot of people were saying that as they saw the influx of immigrants in their counties, cities, states, that they noticed that a lot of the immigrants were not speaking English. Like none of them were able to speak their language. And that actually bothered some people because they said, listen, like there was a point in time where you had to come here and you had to know English. There were certain things you had to know about America, right? And essentially they're talking about to get your citizenship, right? Like knowing capitals of states, knowing United States presidents, knowing certain laws, Yeah, so these things were a problem. Assimilation would be a problem if you're constantly letting people come in and no one has to learn anything about the culture and or country that they're coming to, right? We wouldn't do too well. We wouldn't fare well in another country if we did that, right? So we would have to assimilate in some way. And it's not actually ideal for a group of people to come here and just kind of stay to themselves and never assimilate to the culture and the country itself. It's just not ideal. So what Charlie Kirk is saying, when there's going to be a problem with cohesion and all sorts of issues, I understand where he's going with that. I can't really argue with him on that, because that actually could become a problem depending on the amount of people that are there. And it seems like with this past administration, it happened to where it made a big enough impact. But he's making a great point. I can't go to Greece and just stay there, for as long as I want to, and get a job and get an apartment and just start my life there, and then get caught by the government and think that nothing's going to happen. There is a great chance that I'm going to get deported. Like a great chance. It doesn't matter how long I've been there, if I pay taxes or not. Like, if I'm a law-abiding citizen, that would help me stay there longer and under the radar if I am. But nonetheless, if I get caught by the government and my 90 days are up and my passport is up, I haven't gotten any renewed visas or anything like that, yeah, I'm out of line and I'm going to be deported. So I'm not sure why this is hard for people in America to understand. I just think it's ignorance at this point. And then some of it is arrogance. They just don't care, right? But the fact of the matter is that we can't go to another country and just do that. Like, we will get deported. So, yeah, with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and in the live stream, we got to think common sense about these things. We don't want to see families broken up and, children being left behind and parents taken. But also, like, you have to do the right thing. When Charlie Kirk says that their presence in itself is violating the law, he's not saying that they're not allowed to be here because they're from Venezuela. He's literally saying that if they came into the country illegally and never took any steps to become a legal citizen and of a legal status, he's like, then yeah, that they're breaking the law. And he's absolutely right, they are. So in that sense, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the live stream up. It was great chilling with you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so Wednesday we will be on a little bit earlier than we were today, probably around 7, 8. With that being said, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, be peaceful. Peace.